Story 1. I've been deaf since birth. My parents discovered it when I was about 8 months old, apparently because I didn't react when a pan crashed to the floor right next to me. Growing up deaf wasn't easy, but my family was supportive. They learned sign language alongside me, and my mom fought like hell to make sure I had the resources I needed in school. People often assume that being deaf means living in complete silence, but that's not how it works for everyone. I can feel vibrations and sometimes sense very loud noises as a kind of pressure, but for all practical purposes, I live in a world without sound. I graduated from community college 3 years ago with a degree in accounting, but the job market was brutal. After sending out hundreds of applications and getting nowhere, I finally landed a job as a cashier at Save Mart, a local supermarket chain. Not exactly what I dreamed of doing with my life, but the bills don't pay themselves. Save Mart was actually pretty good about accommodating me. They put a small sign at my register saying "Deaf Cashier," with a little note explaining that customers could point to items or write notes if needed. My manager made sure I had a notepad and pen at all times, and for the most part, people were understanding. I got pretty good at reading lips, which helped a lot. Most of my shifts were uneventful. Scan items, smile, take payment, repeat. Until last Tuesday, when I met her, the woman who would later be dubbed Coupon Karen by my coworkers. It started like any other afternoon shift. I'd been working for about 4 hours, and things were running smoothly. The woman came to my register with a cart full of groceries. Nothing unusual at first, mid-40s, well-dressed, typing on her phone while I scanned her items. I didn't need her to look up for this part anyway. When I finished scanning and showed her the total on the display, she finally put her phone down and started digging through her purse. She pulled out a thick stack of coupons, and that's when the trouble began. I could tell she was talking, but she was looking down at the coupons, so I couldn't read her lips. I tapped the counter gently to get her attention and pointed to my "Deaf Cashier" sign. She glanced at it dismissively and pushed the stack of coupons toward me. I started going through them one by one, but about half of them were expired. Some were for products she hadn't even purchased. When I set those aside and only applied the valid ones, she started what appeared to be a rant. I could catch pieces of it as she occasionally looked up at me. Ridiculous policy customer service, always accepted before. I tried to explain by writing on my notepad. "Sorry, these coupons are expired. These others are for different products. I can only apply these valid ones." She barely looked at my note before launching into what seemed like an even more heated tirade. Her face was getting red, and she was gesturing wildly at the coupons. More customers were lining up behind her, and I could feel the awkward tension building. I tried again, writing, "Would you like to speak to a manager?" That's when she lost it completely. She leaned forward, her face just inches from mine, and screamed something. I couldn't hear it, of course, but I felt the slight push of air on my face and could read her lips clearly. "Are you stupid or something?" Even though I couldn't hear her voice, the venom in her expression was unmistakable. Despite years of dealing with rude people, it still stung. I kept my face neutral, though, and pressed the button to call my supervisor. My coworker from the next register, who I'll call Coworker A, came over. I later learned the conversation went something like this. "Coworker A, is there a problem, ma'am?" "Karen, yes, there's a problem. This cashier is ignoring me and won't accept my coupons. I want to speak to a manager right now." Coworker A, "I'm sorry about the confusion. He's not ignoring you as the sign indicates. He's deaf. He can't hear what you're saying." Karen, "Well, he should have told me that." Coworker A, "There's a sign right here that says Deaf Cashier." Karen, "I shouldn't have to read signs. This is terrible customer service. And why is someone who can't even hear working as a cashier? How is he supposed to help customers?" By this point, my supervisor had arrived. We'll call her Supervisor B. Supervisor B had worked with me for nearly 2 years and had always been supportive. She'd even learned some basic sign language to communicate with me more effectively. "Supervisor B, what seems to be the problem?" Karen, This cashier is being difficult and won't accept my coupons. And apparently, he's deaf, which no one bothered to tell me. Supervisor B, there's a clearly visible sign on his register. Ma'am, as for the coupons, our policy is that we can only accept valid, non-expired coupons for items you've actually purchased today. Karen, that's ridiculous. I've been shopping here for years, and no one has ever refused my coupons before. I want to speak to the store manager. Supervisor B, I am the manager on duty right now. I've reviewed the coupons, and I agree with his assessment. We can only apply these valid ones, which will save you $4.75 on today's purchase. Karen, this is unacceptable. I demand to speak to someone higher up. Better yet, I'm calling the police. Supervisor B, the police? Ma'am, this isn't a police matter. It's just store policy on coupons. Karen, it's discrimination. He refused to acknowledge me because I'm a paying customer, and now you're all ganging up on me. I watched this exchange in bewilderment, catching bits and pieces from reading their lips. Supervisor B tried to sign to me what was happening, but I could tell things were escalating quickly. Other customers were watching the scene unfold, some with phones out, likely recording. To my absolute shock, the woman actually pulled out her phone and appeared to call the police. Supervisor B looked exasperated but remained calm. She asked me to close my register and take a break in the staff room, which I gladly did. About 20 minutes later, Supervisor B came to get me. She explained through writing and sign language that 2 police officers had indeed responded to the call. Apparently, the woman had claimed she was being discriminated against and that I had deliberately ignored her to be rude. When I returned to the front of the store, the officers were still there. One of them knew some sign language, which surprised and delighted me. We'll call him Officer C. Officer C signed slowly. Hello? Can you tell me what happened? I signed back, explaining the situation with the coupons and how the woman had gotten angry when I couldn't hear her complaints. Officer C then spoke to the woman while occasionally signing to me so I could follow along. The conversation went something like this. Officer C, ma'am, I've spoken with the cashier and the manager. It seems there was a misunderstanding about store coupon policy. Karen, it wasn't about the coupons, it was about his attitude. He completely ignored me. Officer C, he didn't ignore you, ma'am. As the sign clearly states, he's deaf. He physically cannot hear you. Karen, well, that's not my problem. If he can't do his job properly, he shouldn't be working here. It's probably just an excuse anyway. Officer C, are you suggesting he's pretending to be deaf? Karen, I don't know. Maybe. Either way, it's terrible customer service. Officer C, ma'am, making false claims about discrimination and misusing emergency services for a dispute over coupons is not appropriate. The store has the right to refuse service to anyone who creates a disturbance. Karen, so you're taking their side? I'm the victim here. At this point, the second officer, who will call Officer D, stepped in. Officer D, ma'am, we've reviewed the store's security footage, which includes audio. You called this employee stupid and caused a significant disturbance. The store manager has informed us that they wish to ban you from the premises. Karen, ban me? I've been shopping here for years. I spend thousands of dollars here. Officer D, that's between you and the store. But if you return after being banned, you could be charged with trespassing. Karen, this is outrageous. I'll sue. I'll call the corporate office. You haven't heard the last of me. Officer C signed to me. Are you okay? I nodded and signed back. Yes, thank you. The woman was escorted out of the store, still threatening to call corporate and file lawsuits against everyone involved. The officers informed her that if she returned to the store, she would be arrested for trespassing. After she left, several customers approached me to express their support. One elderly woman wrote me a note saying, "You handled that with such grace. Don't let people like that get you down." Another customer, who knew sign language, told me his brother was also deaf and that he admired my patience. Supervisor B gave me the rest of the day off with pay, which I appreciated. When I returned to work the next day, I discovered I had become something of a minor celebrity among the staff. Several of my coworkers had learned to sign "thank you" and "you're awesome" overnight, which touched me deeply. A week later, Supervisor B called me into the office to tell me that the woman had indeed called corporate to complain. However, after reviewing the security footage and statements from staff and customers, corporate not only upheld her ban, but sent me a formal letter of apology along with a gift card. Even more surprisingly, a local news station got wind of the story. Apparently, one of the customers had posted video of the incident online, and it had gone viral. They ran a short segment about disabilities in the workplace and interviewed me about my experience. It was surreal seeing myself on TV, signing my responses while a translator voiced them over. The most meaningful outcome, though, was that Save Mart decided to implement a company-wide disability awareness training program. They asked me to help develop the deaf awareness portion, which included some basic sign language that would be useful in a retail setting. It's been 3 months since the incident, and things have mostly returned to normal. Occasionally, a customer will recognize me from the news story and want to practice their newly learned signs, which is always amusing and appreciated. A few of my coworkers have gotten seriously interested in learning sign language, and we practice during lunch breaks. As for Coupon Karen, I heard from a coworker that she tried to come back to the store wearing sunglasses and a hat as a disguise about a month after the incident. Security recognized her immediately and escorted her out. Apparently, she's now banned from all Save Mart locations in the state. I never expected a routine shift to turn into such a life-changing event. While I wouldn't wish an encounter with someone like her on anyone, I'm grateful for the positive changes that came from it. Maybe someday I'll still get that accounting job, but for now, I'm content where I am, silently scanning groceries and occasionally sharing my story with others who face similar challenges. Being deaf in a hearing world isn't easy, but most people are kind and patient once they understand. For every Coupon Karen out there, there are hundreds of decent folks who treat others with respect, regardless of their abilities or differences. That's something worth remembering. Story 2. I never thought I'd be the guy with one of those entitled person stories you read about online. But here we are. Let me tell you what happened on what should have been a routine business flight last week. For context, I'm a sales director for a medical equipment company. My job requires me to travel at least twice a month to meet with hospital administrators and purchasing managers across the country. It's exhausting work, long presentations, longer dinners, and the constant pressure of hitting quarterly targets. After 5 years of this grind, I finally reached a position where the company covers first-class tickets for flights over 3 hours. Not to sound entitled myself, but after spending so much time in cramped economy seats, working on presentations while my elbows touched both armrests, this perk meant a lot to me. This particular trip was to San Francisco for a major healthcare conference, where our company was unveiling a new imaging system. My boss had made it clear that landing at least 2 major contracts from this event would be ideal corporate speak for mandatory if you want your bonus. I had been preparing for weeks, fine-tuning my pitch deck and memorizing specifications until I could recite them in my sleep. The day of the flight, I arrived at the airport 2 hours early as usual. I checked in, breezed through security with my frequent flyer status, and even had time to grab coffee before heading to the gate. The boarding process went smoothly. Being in first class meant I was among the first to board. I found my seat, a window seat in the second row of first class, perfect for resting against the wall and getting some last-minute review done before landing. But as I approached, I saw someone was already sitting there. A middle-aged woman with highlighted blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail was lounging comfortably, designer purse on her lap, staring out my window. I double-checked my boarding pass. Definitely me, excuse me, I think you might be in my seat. She didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the window, though I noticed her grip tighten slightly on her purse. Me, ma'am? I believe you're in seat 2A, which is mine. The woman closed her eyes, feigning sleep. I stood there awkwardly, carry-on still in hand, wondering if I should tap her shoulder or just find a flight attendant. A line was forming behind me in the aisle. The man behind me cleared his throat impatiently, and I felt my face flush. Looking around, I spotted a flight attendant helping someone stow luggage a few rows back. Excuse me, could I get some help? The flight attendant, a professional-looking woman with a neat bun, came over immediately. Flight attendant, is everything all right, sir? I believe this woman is in my assigned seat, 2A. The flight attendant looked at the woman, who was now doing an impressive impression of someone in deep sleep, complete with light snoring. Flight attendant, ma'am? Excuse me, ma'am? After a few more attempts, the flight attendant gently tapped the woman's shoulder. The woman's eyes fluttered open with exaggerated surprise, as if she'd been in the deepest sleep of her life. Middle-aged woman, what's happening? Flight attendant, I'm sorry to disturb you, but this gentleman says you might be in his seat. The woman looked at me with obvious disdain, then turned to the flight attendant with a completely transformed expression, sweet and confused. Middle-aged woman, oh, I don't think so. This is my seat. I'm quite comfortable already. Flight attendant, could I see your boarding pass, please? The woman started rummaging through her purse, taking her time, pulling out tissues, a makeup bag, and what looked like several candy wrappers before producing her boarding pass with a flourish. The flight attendant checked it and then looked at mine. Flight attendant, ma'am, your boarding pass shows seat 16C, which is in economy class. This gentleman has 2A, which is this seat. The woman's face changed instantly from confusion to indignation. Middle-aged woman, that can't be right. I always fly first class. Flight attendant, I understand, but for this flight, your assigned seat is 16C. Middle-aged woman, look, I'm not moving. I'm comfortable here, and I deserve this seat more than some random man. My eyebrows shot up. Deserve? What did that even mean? The flight attendant maintained her professional demeanor, though I noticed her smile tighten. Flight attendant, ma'am, assigned seating is required for safety and balance of the aircraft. Everyone needs to sit in their designated seat. Middle-aged woman, do you know who I am? My husband plays golf with the CEO of this airline. I'm not moving to economy like some common person. My back hurts, and I need the extra space. By this point, boarding had slowed to a halt. People were backing up in the jetway, and I could feel dozens of eyes on us. The embarrassment was overwhelming, but what could I do? I didn't want to cause more of a scene, but it was my seat that I had paid for. Flight attendant, ma'am, if you have medical concerns, we can try to accommodate you with an economy seat with extra legroom. But this seat is assigned to this passenger. The woman crossed her arms over her chest like a defiant child. Middle-aged woman, no, I'm staying right here. The flight attendant looked at me apologetically. Flight attendant, sir, would you be willing to take another seat in first class? I can check if there's availability. Before I could respond, the woman interjected. Middle-aged woman, see? Problem solved. He can sit somewhere else. This was getting ridiculous. I'm generally a non-confrontational person, but after weeks of stress preparing for this trip, I wasn't in the mood to be bullied out of my assigned seat. I'm sorry, but I specifically selected this seat when I booked. I have work to do during the flight, and the window seat allows me the privacy I need. The woman rolled her eyes dramatically. Middle-aged woman, oh please. What are you, some kind of important businessman? I'm a mother of 3. Do you know how exhausting that is? The flight attendant tried again. Flight attendant, ma'am, I need to ask you one more time to move to your assigned seat. Middle-aged woman, and I'm telling you one more time that I'm not moving. At this point, the lead flight attendant came over, having been alerted to the situation. He was tall with graying temples and a no-nonsense expression. Lead flight attendant, what seems to be the problem? The first flight attendant explained the situation quietly. The lead nodded and addressed the woman. Lead flight attendant, Ma'am, you need to move to your assigned seat immediately, or I'll have to call airport security." The woman's face flushed red. "Middle-aged woman, are you threatening me? This is discrimination. I'm going to sue this entire airline." Lead flight attendant, "This isn't a threat, ma'am. It's airline policy. All passengers must sit in their assigned seats." Middle-aged woman, "Call your supervisor. I demand to speak to the captain." Lead flight attendant, "The captain is preparing for takeoff and cannot be disturbed. This is your final warning. Please move to your assigned seat." She clutched her purse closer to her chest, her knuckles white. "Middle-aged woman, I'm not going anywhere." The lead flight attendant sighed and pulled out a phone. Within minutes, 2 airport security officers appeared at the entrance to the plane. By now, the boarding process had completely stalled, and I could hear grumbling from the passengers stuck waiting. "Security officer, ma'am, we need you to come with us." The woman looked around wildly, seeming to finally realize she might actually face consequences. "Middle-aged woman, I'm not going anywhere. Help. This man is attacking me." She pointed at me, and I stepped back, hands raised, completely shocked by the accusation. "Me? What? I haven't touched you." "Security officer, ma'am, nobody is attacking you. We just need you to move to your correct seat or exit the aircraft." That's when she started wailing. Not crying, wailing. The kind of sound you'd expect if someone was being actively murdered. Passengers were craning their necks to see what was happening, and I wanted nothing more than to disappear into the floor. "Middle-aged woman, help, help. I'm being assaulted. These men are hurting me." She thrashed in her seat, flailing her arms dramatically. One of her hands knocked over my coffee, spilling it all over my pants. Hot liquid seeped through the fabric, but I barely registered the pain, too stunned by the spectacle unfolding. The security officers exchanged looks that clearly said, "Not this again." "Security officer, ma'am, we're going to have to remove you from the aircraft. Please come with us willingly, or we will have to escort you." "Middle-aged woman, I'll sue all of you. I know my rights." She grabbed onto the armrest with surprising strength as the officers attempted to help her up. One of them spoke into his radio, and within minutes, 2 more officers arrived. The woman's shrieks escalated as they carefully extracted her from the seat. She went completely limp, forcing them to practically carry her down the aisle. As they passed the rows of staring passengers, she screamed accusations at everyone. The airline was racist. Though we were the same race, I was a sexual harasser, though I had maintained a respectful distance the entire time. The flight attendants were fascist for enforcing standard airline policy. Once they finally got her off the plane, a round of applause broke out among the passengers. The lead flight attendant returned to me, looking exhausted. Lead flight attendant, "Sir, I'm incredibly sorry for that experience. Please, take your seat. We'll have this aircraft ready for departure as soon as possible." Me, "Thank you. I appreciate your handling of the situation." As I finally settled into my seat, the flight attendant brought me a fresh coffee and a complimentary set of noise-canceling headphones. "Flight attendant, again, we're very sorry. That woman has been placed on our no-fly list effective immediately. This isn't her first incident with us." The flight ended up departing 30 minutes late, but those headphones and the absolute silence they provided were heavenly. I managed to review my entire presentation and even get a short nap before landing. The conference went well. I landed not 2, but 3 major contracts, earning a congratulatory email from the CEO himself. On my return flight home, the check-in agent mentioned that they had a note on my account about the incident and upgraded me to first class with extra legroom. I later heard through a colleague who works for the airline that the woman had attempted to pull similar stunts on 2 previous flights and had been warned before. This time, she was not only placed on this airline's no-fly list, but also reported to the Transportation Security Administration for disruptive behavior. Apparently, she tried to claim she had a medical condition that required first-class accommodation, but couldn't produce any documentation. The most satisfying part: as I was leaving the airport after returning home, I spotted her at the customer service desk of a different airline, likely trying to book a new flight after being banned from mine. From her wild gesticulations and the weary expression of the agent helping her, it seemed like her entitled attitude hadn't changed one bit. Some people never learn. Story 3. I've been working at the Golden Swan for almost 3 years now. It's one of those high-end restaurants where a single meal costs more than what I make in a day. I started as a dishwasher, worked my way up to busboy, and finally got promoted to server 6 months ago. The tips are good, the owner is fair, and most of the customers are polite, if a bit snobby sometimes. The restaurant is owned by a man who inherited it from his father. He's not some fancy chef with a TV show or anything. He's just a guy who loves good food and knows how to run a business. He's always around, checking on things, talking to customers, and making sure everything runs smoothly. The staff all call him boss, and the regular customers know him by his first name. Saturday nights are always packed. We get the weekend crowd, couples celebrating anniversaries, business people treating clients, tourists who saved up for a special meal. The atmosphere is usually pleasant, with soft jazz playing in the background and the gentle clink of silverware against fine china. Last Saturday started like any other. I was assigned to Section 3, which has the tables near the large windows overlooking the city. It's a coveted section because the view is amazing, especially at sunset, and the customers tend to be extra generous with their tips. I had a reservation for a party of 2 at table 14 at 7:30 p.m. At 7:45 p.m., they finally showed up. A woman in her mid-40s with perfectly styled blonde hair, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Me, good evening. Do you have a reservation? Woman, table for 2. Under the name redacted. And we're late because your parking situation is absolutely ridiculous. I resisted the urge to point out that we have valet parking and that being 15 minutes late without calling is considered rude in any restaurant. Me, yes, I have your reservation right here. Please follow me. I led them to table 14, which had been ready for them since 7:20 p.m. I handed them the menus and recited the specials for the evening. Me, can I start you off with something to drink? The man opened his mouth, but the woman cut him off. Woman, we'll have a bottle of the 2015 Shadow Margox. I tried not to wince. That was a $900 bottle of wine. Me, excellent choice. I'll bring that right out. As I walked away, I heard the man say something about the price, but the woman just laughed and said something about living a little. I felt bad for him. He seemed like he was being dragged along on an expensive night out he couldn't afford. I brought the wine, went through the whole presentation ritual, and took their orders. The woman ordered the most expensive items on the menu, the Wagyu beef with truffle sauce, the gold-flaked foie gras appetizer, and the imported caviar. The man ordered a simple steak and salad. The first sign of trouble came when they finished their appetizers. The woman snapped her fingers at me as I was passing by with food for another table. Woman, the crab wasn't fresh. I want it taken off the bill. I approached their table after delivering the food to my other customers. Me, I'm very sorry to hear that. Was there something specific about it that... Woman, I don't need to explain myself. I know what fresh crab tastes like. Just take it off the bill. Her companion looked embarrassed. Man, it was fine. Really, it's not. Woman, don't be ridiculous. We're paying too much to accept mediocre food. I nodded and said I would speak to the chef. In the kitchen, I mentioned the complaint to the chef, who looked offended. The crab had been delivered that morning, and he personally inspected all the seafood. But he shrugged it off. In this business, you learn not to take things personally. When I returned to check on them, they had finished their main courses. The woman had barely touched her Wagyu beef, claiming it was too fatty, which is literally the point of Wagyu beef. But she had no problem emptying the wine bottle. Then came the moment that would make this night memorable. I presented the bill, which came to just over $1,200. The woman looked at it and laughed as if I'd told a joke. Woman, there must be a mistake. Where's my discount? Me, I'm sorry, but I'm not aware of any discount that would apply tonight. Are you perhaps thinking of our Tuesday wine special? Woman, no, I'm thinking of my personal discount. I know the owner. He always gives me 50% off. Her companion shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Man, maybe we should just pay the bill and go. Woman, absolutely not. I've known your boss for years. Call him right now. Me, our owner is actually here tonight. I can ask him to come speak with you if you'd like. Woman, yes, do that. Tell him his dear friend is here. I went to find the owner, who was in his office reviewing some paperwork. Me, boss, there's a woman at table 14 who says she knows you personally and that you always give her a 50% discount. He looked up from his papers, confused. Boss, what's her name? I told him, and he shook his head. Boss, I've never heard that name in my life. What does she look like? I described her, and again he shook his head. Boss, I don't know her. I'll come talk to her. We walked back to the dining room together. By this time, the woman had ordered another bottle of wine, despite her companion's protests. She beamed when she saw the owner approaching. Woman, there you are. It's been too long. She stood up as if to hug him, but he stopped a few feet away, looking confused. Boss, good evening. My server tells me you've been asking for a discount. Woman, oh, don't be so formal. After all we've been through. I was just telling everyone how you always take care of your special guests. The owner looked at me, then back at her. Boss, I'm sorry, but I don't believe we've met. I don't offer personal discounts to anyone except immediate family. The woman's face changed instantly. The friendly smile disappeared, replaced by an angry scowl. Woman, what are you talking about? We met at the charity gala last year. We talked about opening a restaurant together. Boss, ma'am, I didn't attend any charity galas last year. I think there's been a misunderstanding. By now, other diners were turning to watch the scene unfold. The woman's companion had sunk so low in his chair he was practically under the table. Woman, this is outrageous. You know very well who I am. You would never treat me this way. Her voice was getting louder with each word. The owner remained calm. Boss, I assure you, I have no idea who you are. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or... Woman, or what? You'll throw me out? Do you know how much business I bring to this place? All my friends come here because of me. She was shouting now, and every conversation in the restaurant had stopped. People were openly staring. Boss, ma'am, please calm down. If you're unhappy with your bill, we can discuss it privately in my office. Woman, don't you dare patronize me, you ungrateful little man. After everything I've done for you. Her companion finally spoke up. Man, please, let's just go. I'll pay the bill. This is embarrassing. Woman, shut up. I'm not paying a cent for this terrible food and even worse service. The owner's patience was visibly wearing thin. Boss, ma'am, if you don't lower your voice, I will have to ask you to leave. Woman, make me. And then, in a move that left everyone gasping, she picked up her freshly poured glass of red wine and threw it directly at the owner's face. The expensive Bordeaux splashed across his white shirt and dripped down onto his pants. There was a moment of complete silence in the restaurant. Then the owner calmly took out his phone. Boss, I'm calling the police. You just assaulted me. Woman, oh, please, it's just wine. You're overreacting. But the owner was already speaking to the emergency dispatcher, describing the situation. The woman seemed to realize suddenly that she had crossed a line. She grabbed her purse and stood up. Woman, come on, we're leaving. Her companion didn't move. Man, I'm not going anywhere with you. And you're not going anywhere either. You need to stay and deal with this. Woman, are you serious? You're taking his side? Man, this isn't about sides. You just assaulted someone because they wouldn't give you a discount you never deserved in the first place. And this is our first date, I don't even know you." That last revelation made several nearby diners gasp. This wasn't even her husband or longtime boyfriend, it was a first date. The poor guy had probably matched with her on some dating app and was now witnessing her having a complete meltdown in a public place. The woman tried to leave anyway, but two of our burlier servers stood by the exit, not touching her, but making it clear she wasn't going to just walk out. The police arrived within minutes. When the officers came in, the woman immediately changed her demeanor. She started crying and claiming that the owner had been rude to her and that she had accidentally spilled her drink. But there were at least 30 witnesses who immediately contradicted her story, including her own date. The officers took statements from the owner, from me, from the date, and from a couple of nearby diners. They looked at the security camera footage that captured the whole incident. Then they handcuffed the woman and informed her she was being arrested for assault. "Woman, this is ridiculous. It was just wine. I'll sue all of you. I know people, important people." But her threats fell on deaf ears as the officers escorted her out. Her date stayed behind to pay the bill in full, adding a very generous tip. He apologized profusely to everyone, explaining that they had met through an exclusive dating service that supposedly vetted its clients. Man, I guess they don't vet for basic human decency. After the police and the remaining customers left, we closed up for the night. The owner called us all together for an impromptu staff meeting. "Boss, I want to thank you all for handling that situation professionally. It's not every day someone claims to be my best friend and then throws wine in my face." We all laughed, relieved that the tension was broken. "Boss, drinks are on me tonight. And don't worry, I actually do know the owner of the bar across the street. No fake discount needed." That night, as we all sat around talking and unwinding, I couldn't help but think about the woman. What kind of life must she lead to think she could get away with such behavior? Did she pull this stunt at other restaurants? Had it worked before? I later found out from a friend who works in the district attorney's office that the woman was charged with assault and had to pay a fine, perform community service, and undergo anger management therapy. Apparently, she had a history of similar incidents at other high-end establishments in the city. She was also banned from our restaurant for life. As for her date, he came back a few weeks later with a different woman, one who was polite to the staff, didn't demand special treatment, and actually seemed to enjoy his company rather than the expensive wine. He left another generous tip and thanked me for how I'd handled the situation on that notorious night. Some people never learn that you can't buy class or connections. No discount in the world is worth sacrificing your dignity or risking an assault charge.